While I was closing a $14 million deal in Europe, my parents pawned my car to fund my sister's business. When I got back, Mom said she needed it more. I replied with 6 words, and her face went completely white. I was halfway across the world, closing the biggest deal of my life, a multi-million-dollar partnership that would define my career. But then, a single phone call ripped me out of that high-stakes world and plunged me into a betrayal so deep, it made my own mother's face drain of all color when she finally realized what she'd done. This isn't just about a car. It's about the moment I finally drew a line in the sand with the people who were supposed to have my back. Look, I'm Timothy, and I'm 32. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. That was my label, my role in the family. My younger sister, Amanda, for years my junior, she was the free spirit, the spontaneous one. I'd meticulously save every penny of my allowance to buy a model car I'd been dreaming of. Amanda? She'd blow through hers on a single mall trip. My parents would just smile, calling it living in the moment. When I try to question it, they'd wave it off. That's just who she is, Timothy. You're the responsible one. Those words, man, they weren't just words. They became the blueprint for my entire life, whether I wanted them to or not. By high school, our paths were like 2 parallel lines, never touching. I was grafting, working part-time at a local auto shop, hands stained with grease, saving every dime for college. I loved it there, learning engines, learning discipline. Amanda? She floated from dance to photography to fashion, each new passion funded by my parents, never sticking with anything for more than a few months. College was my escape, my shot at independence. They paid for Amanda's full ride, no questions asked. Me? I worked my way through a business degree, took 6 grueling years instead of 4, because I was balancing classes with 2 jobs. But I earned it. Every single bit of it. Frank, the owner of that auto shop, he became more than a boss. He was a mentor. He taught me about carburetors, sure, but more importantly, he taught me about integrity. A man's reputation is built on keeping his word. Tim, he'd say, your handshake should be as binding as any contract. Those lessons, they stuck. They became the bedrock of my career, propelling me from entry-level sales to international business development. All those years, my love for classic cars never faded. I'd devour magazines, visit shows, dreaming of owning a piece of history. The 60s Mustangs, especially, they just spoke to me. Not just their aggressive lines or powerful engines, but what they represented: freedom, the American spirit, and the sweet reward of honest hard work. They weren't just machines to me. They were a symbol. So, when I turned 27, after my first major promotion, I finally found her. A 1967 Shelby GT 500 in Highland Green. She was rough, a faded beauty, torn interior, an engine barely breathing. The previous owner had kept her in a barn for 20 years, couldn't afford to fix her up, but wouldn't sell until medical bills forced his hand. I negotiated hard, paid $22,000, every cent I had saved after paying off my student loans. My parents, of course, thought I was insane. Why waste money on a broken-down old car? My father scoffed. But for once, their approval wasn't even on my radar. That restoration became my obsession. Every single weekend for 3 years, I poured my soul into that car. I hunted down original parts from collectors across the country, taught myself metalwork to fix those quarter panels, and rebuilt that 355 horsepower V8 engine by hand. Frank let me use his shop after hours, guided me through the trickier bits. Each restored component connected me deeper to the car's history and to my own journey. That Shelby wasn't just transportation. It was my independence, my values, the countless hours I'd invested in creating something beautiful from something neglected. When I finally took her for a proper drive, the rumble of that engine felt like applause for years of dedication. It was pure, unadulterated triumph. Meanwhile, Amanda, she'd dropped out of college twice by then, each time pivoting to a new dream. Fashion design gave way to event planning, then to interior decorating. And each time, my parents happily funded these ventures, wiping away her debts when they inevitably failed. I kept my opinions to myself, focusing on building my career. By 31, all that hard work paid off. I was promoted to Senior Director of International Development, tasked with expanding our tech firm's presence in Europe. It meant frequent travel, weeks abroad, but the compensation matched the sacrifice. My first major assignment? Securing a $14 million partnership with a German manufacturing conglomerate, potentially the biggest deal in our company's history. Before heading to Frankfurt, I had dinner with Jessica, my girlfriend of almost 2 years. We'd met at a classic car show. She knew her vintage Corvettes, which obviously impressed me. That night, I gave her a spare key to my house. Just check on things while I'm gone, I asked. Water your plants, grab the mail, she promised, kissing me goodbye. Just focus on nailing that deal. I also stopped by my parents' house, bubbling with excitement about the opportunity. They seemed proud, for a moment, before the conversation predictably swiveled to Amanda's newest venture, a boutique she wanted to open, selling locally designed clothing. She just needs a small investment to get started, Mom chirped. Sounds interesting, I said neutrally, having learned not to question her business acumen. More than interesting, Timothy, my mother insisted. This is going to be her breakthrough. I nodded, a familiar, hollow feeling in my chest. Little did I know just how far they would go to ensure Amanda's breakthrough would happen, or what it would cost me. As I boarded the plane to Germany, my Shelby sat safely in its climate-controlled garage, tucked under a custom cover. I had no reason to suspect it wouldn't be there when I returned. 3 weeks into my trip to Frankfurt, negotiations were soaring, better than expected. The German executives appreciated my straightforward approach, my attention to detail. We were finalizing contract terms when my phone lit up with Jessica's name. It was 2 a.m. back home. My gut immediately clenched. Something was wrong. Jessica, is everything okay? I answered, stepping out of the conference room. Her voice was strained. Tim, I don't know how to tell you this. You need to come home. My mind raced. Was she hurt? A break-in? What happened? Are you all right? I demanded, my voice sharp. I'm fine, but... She hesitated. It's about your car. The Shelby. My stomach tightened into a knot. What about it? I think this is something we should discuss when you're back. Jessica, I growled, my control fraying. Tell me what's going on. How soon can you get here? She finally blurted it out. I went to check on your house yesterday. Noticed the garage door was slightly open. When I looked inside, the car was gone. The conference room spun around me. A break-in? Did you call the police? No break-in, she whispered. Your mom called me this morning. Your parents, Tim. They took it. I couldn't process it. That's impossible. They don't have keys. I don't have all the details. They're not answering my calls now. I'm so sorry, Tim. Through the glass wall, the German executives watched me, concern etched on their faces. I forced myself to remain composed. I'll book the next flight home. Keep trying to reach them. I returned to the meeting, somehow maintaining a professional demeanor while explaining a family emergency. The Germans were understanding. We'd continue remotely until I could return. Throughout the 14-hour flight home, I cycled between disbelief, burning anger, and frantic rationalizations that it had to be some misunderstanding. Jessica was waiting at the airport, dark circles under her eyes, a testament to her sleepless nights. She hugged me tight, said little during the drive to my house. When we pulled into the driveway, I ran to the garage. The empty space where my Shelby should have been felt like a physical blow. Tell me everything, I said, once we were inside, sitting in my living room. 2 days ago, I drove by to check your mail, like always, she began. I saw a tow truck in your driveway and your parents directing the driver. I pulled in, asked what was happening. Your mom said they were moving the Shelby to their house for safekeeping while you were away. Something about your garage not being secure enough. My voice was cold. And you believe that? Jessica's eyes flashed with hurt. Of course not. I told them they needed to call you first, but your father said they'd already discussed it with you. He was very convincing, Tim. When I insisted on calling you, they said they didn't want to disturb you during such important negotiations. That it was a family matter. I rubbed my temples, a crushing headache building. Have you heard anything from them since? Nothing. I've called and texted multiple times. Jessica hesitated. But I saw something on Facebook yesterday. She pulled out her phone, opened Amanda's profile. There was a series of photos, the grand opening of Amanda's atelier. The space was decorated with local art, racks of clothes. The caption read, "Dreams coming true. So grateful for the unconditional support of family who believe in me." Jessica scrolled to another photo. Amanda, cutting a ribbon with oversized scissors, a set of keys dangling from her other hand, keys with a distinctive Shelby Cobra keychain I'd had custom-made. My blood ran cold. I don't understand, I said, though the pieces were clicking into place in the most sickening way. There's more, Jessica said quietly, showing me Amanda's Instagram story where she thanked our parents for making this possible and leveraging assets to secure my future. I tried calling my parents immediately, straight to voicemail. I texted, "We need to talk about my car. Now." No response. The next day passed in deafening silence from my family. I contacted local police to report the car stolen, but when I explained it was my parents who had taken it, the officer just shrugged. "Civil matter, not theft," he said. Without evidence of forced entry, their hands were tied. On the second day, I checked Amanda's social media again. Photos of a successful first weekend at the boutique. Comments brimming with congratulations, several from my parents, praising her entrepreneurial spirit and sacrifice. Sacrifice. That word burned in my mind. I had sacrificed years of weekends and holidays to build my career. I had sacrificed a normal social life to restore that car. Now my family had sacrificed my prized possession, without my knowledge or consent. For what? Another of Amanda's doomed ventures. That evening, Jessica found a business listing. Amanda's boutique had received a small business loan from Capital Edge Financing, a company known for high-interest loans against collateral. The pieces clicked with horrifying clarity. They had used my car as collateral for Amanda's business loan. I knew I wouldn't confront them over the phone or text. This betrayal deserved a face-to-face conversation. I would go to Sunday dinner, unannounced, and see if they would even mention what they'd done. "Do you want me to come with you?" Jessica asked as I prepared to leave. I shook my head. "This is between me and my family. But thank you for having my back through all this." She squeezed my hand. "Always. Just try to stay calm, okay? Don't let anger make you say things you'll regret." As I drove to my childhood home, I wondered if they had any idea how deeply their actions had wounded me, or if they even cared. Sunday evening arrived with ominous storm clouds gathering on the horizon, perfectly matching my mood. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 5:45, 15 minutes before our usual family dinner. My mother's surprised expression when she opened the door confirmed they hadn't expected me. "Timothy, you're back from Germany." She embraced me as if nothing were amiss. "Why didn't you tell us you were coming? I would have made your favorite pot roast instead of lasagna." I returned the hug mechanically. Last-minute change of plans. The house smelled of garlic bread and tomato sauce. Dad was watching baseball in the living room. Amanda was setting the dining table. Her eyes widened when she saw me, but she quickly masked her reaction with an overly bright smile. "The international businessman returns," she chirped, giving me a quick side hug. "How was Europe? Did you close your big fancy deal?" "Almost," I replied, studying her face for any flicker of guilt. "Just a few details to finalize remotely." My father muted the TV and joined us. "That's my boy, always making things happen." He clapped me on the shoulder, offering a beer. I accepted the bottle, wondering if they were really going to pretend everything was normal. We moved to the dining room. Mom served her homemade lasagna. Dad droned on about the neighbor's new swimming pool. Amanda chattered about celebrity fashion trends. Not once did anyone mention my car, or Amanda's new boutique. The elephant in the room was so massive I could barely breathe around it. Finally, as Mom served tiramisu for dessert, I set down my fork with a deliberate clink against the plate. "So," I said, my voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath, "no one's going to mention the Shelby?" The table fell silent. My mother's spoon paused midair. Dad suddenly became intensely interested in his dessert. Only Amanda maintained eye contact, though her expression had hardened. "What about it?" Mom finally asked, her tone cautious. "I'd like to know why my car isn't in my garage where I left it." Mom and Dad exchanged glances before Mom placed her hand over mine. "Honey, we helped Amanda use it as collateral for a business loan for her boutique." The casual way she said it, as if borrowing a cup of sugar rather than taking my $70,000 restored classic car, made my blood pressure spike. "You helped by taking my property without permission." My voice remained controlled, but it took immense effort. Dad leaned forward. "Now, Tim, you weren't using it anyway. It was just sitting in your garage while you were in Europe. That doesn't make it available for anyone else to use, let alone pawn." "We tried calling you," Mom said weakly. I pulled out my phone, showed my call history. "No, you didn't." "Well, we didn't want to bother you during your important business trip," she amended. So you decided stealing my car would be less bothersome. Dad's face reddened. Watch your tone, son. We didn't steal anything. We're family. Family asks permission before taking something that doesn't belong to them. Amanda, who had remained quiet, now scoffed. It's just a car, Timothy. You can always buy another one, especially with your big corporate salary. I turned to her, maintaining my composure. That just a car took me 3 years to restore. It's worth over $120,000 now, which is exactly why it made perfect sense as collateral. Mom interjected, as if this justified everything. Amanda needed startup capital, and the loan company was very impressed with the value of the Shelby. And it's not like we sold it, Dad added. Once her business takes off, she'll pay back the loan and you'll get your car back. Everyone wins. I shook my head in disbelief. Everyone wins. I never agreed to risk my car for Amanda's latest whim. It's not a whim. Amanda snapped. This boutique is my dream. Some of us weren't born with your natural business sense and need a little help. Help? I shot back. Is offering advice or a reasonable loan, not taking something that belongs to someone else. Mom's expression softened into that familiar, enabling look she always used for Amanda. Honey, we understand you're upset, but she needed it more than you do. You have your career, your house, your girlfriend. Amanda is still finding her way. Those 6 words. She needed it more than you do. They hit me like a physical blow. It was the same justification I'd heard throughout our entire childhood. When Amanda got new clothes while I wore hand-me-downs, when she received a car for her 16th birthday, while I worked summers to buy a used Honda, when they paid for her college while I took out loans. I took a deep breath, determined not to let raw emotion override reason. How exactly did you get the car out of my garage? Dad looked incredibly uncomfortable. We still had your spare key from when you lived at home. We never got around to returning it. And the garage? The opener was in the glove compartment of your old Honda. We figured you never changed the code. The sheer premeditation stunned me. They had deliberately used keys they should have returned years ago, knowing full well I wouldn't approve. Where is it now? I asked. Liberty Pawn and Loan on 5th Street, Amanda answered. They're very reputable. They even have a climate-controlled storage facility for high-value items like your car. How much did you borrow against it? Amanda glanced at our parents. $30,000. I almost laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. $30,000? That car is worth 4 times that amount. Well, pawn shops never give full value, Dad said defensively. And what are the terms of the loan? More uncomfortable glances between them. Finally, Mom spoke. 3 months to repay, with 20% interest. I did the quick math. So, you need to repay $36,000 within 3 months, or they keep my $120,000 car. The business will be profitable by then, Amanda said confidently. We've already had a great opening weekend. And if it's not profitable, if you can't repay, then we'll figure something out, Dad said firmly. We always do. We're family. The word family now felt hollow, a cruel mockery. I pushed back my chair and stood. Timothy, where are you going? Mom asked, alarmed. Home. I need to process this. Don't be so dramatic, Amanda sneered. It's not like you were even planning to drive the car while you were in Europe. I turned to her. That's not the point, and you know it. The point is, you've always had everything come easy to you. Some of us have to get creative to make our dreams happen, she shot back. There's nothing creative about taking what isn't yours, I replied, heading for the door. Mom followed me onto the porch. Timothy, please try to understand. We're just trying to help your sister get established. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw for the first time not just my mother, but a woman who had spent decades enabling one child at the expense of another. I'm going to get my car back, I said quietly. And this isn't going to end the way you think. As I drove away, I realized that for all their talk about family, they had never considered how their actions would make me feel. They had never considered me at all. The 20-minute drive from my parents' house to my own felt like crossing an emotional desert. The same streets I'd traveled thousands of times now seemed alien as my mind replayed the conversation over and over. She needed it more than you do. 5 words that summarized a lifetime of imbalance I had accepted as normal. When I pulled into my driveway, Jessica's car was still there. I found her curled up on my couch with a book, waiting for me. One look at my face told her everything. That bad? She asked, setting aside her novel. I sank down beside her. Worse. They didn't even try to hide it. They acted like they were doing me a favor by putting the car to good use while I was away. As I recounted the dinner conversation, Jessica's expression shifted from concern to disbelief to anger on my behalf. When I finished, she took my hand. "I'm so sorry, Tim. I know how much that car means to you." "It's not even just about the car," I said, surprising myself with the revelation. "It's what it represents. Every weekend for 3 years, I worked on that Shelby. Every penny I saved went into those parts. And they treated it like it was nothing. Like my work, my passion, my property were all just resources for Amanda to tap whenever she wants." Jessica nodded, understanding in a way my family never had. She'd seen the late nights I'd spent researching original parts, the grease-stained clothes, the pride when I finally got the engine purring perfectly. "Have they always been this way?" she asked gently. The question triggered a flood of memories I'd long suppressed. The Christmas when my college fund was reduced to pay for Amanda's horse riding lessons. The time my parents missed my high school graduation because Amanda had a dance recital the same day. The countless times I'd loaned Amanda money she never repaid, for rent when she was between jobs, for a security deposit on an apartment after a breakup, for credit card debt she'd racked up on shopping sprees. "Yes," I admitted. "Always. I just accepted it as normal." "Amanda needs more support," they'd say. "You're the responsible one, you understand." That doesn't make it right. I know. But after a while, you just stop expecting fairness. My phone buzzed with an incoming call, my boss, Richard. I almost ignored it, but the Frankfurt deal needed attention regardless of my personal crisis. "Timothy, great news," Richard said when I answered. "The Germans signed the preliminary agreement. They were impressed with how you handled the unexpected departure. The legal team just needs your final review of the terms." That's fantastic," I managed, trying to match his enthusiasm. "More than fantastic," he boomed. "The board approved a special bonus for you, $100,000 for bringing in our largest European client ever. You've really outdone yourself." After we discussed a few details and arranged a meeting for the following morning, I hung up and turned to Jessica. "The deal went through. They're giving me a bonus." "That's amazing." Her smile faded when she saw my expression. "Isn't it? It should be. But all I can think about is how many times I've helped Amanda financially while working my ass off. And the one time I'm succeeding, really succeeding, my family betrays me." Jessica was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do about the car?" "I don't know yet, but I'm not letting them get away with this." That night, I barely slept. By morning, I had decided. I called my friend Marcus, who practiced civil law. We met for coffee before my meeting with Richard. "Let me get this straight," Marcus said after I explained the situation. "Your parents took your car using spare keys they never returned, without your permission, and used it as collateral for your sister's business loan?" "Yes." "Tim, that's not just ethically wrong, it's legally theft. Family or not. What are my options?" Marcus laid them out clearly. I could file a police report for theft, which could result in criminal charges against my parents. I could sue them civilly for the value of the car. Or I could try to recover the car directly from the pawn shop, though I'd have to pay off the loan Amanda had taken out. "The pawn shop isn't really at fault here," Marcus explained. "They made a loan in good faith to people who presented themselves as authorized to use the car as collateral. So I'd have to pay $36,000 to get back my own property, unless I want to press charges against my family." "Yes, but you could then sue your parents and sister to recover that money." The thought of my parents and Amanda facing criminal charges made me deeply uncomfortable, despite their betrayal. But the idea of paying a small fortune to recover what was already mine felt equally wrong. "Think about it," Marcus advised. "But don't wait too long. These pawn shop loans can escalate quickly with fees." After my meeting with Richard, where I somehow maintained professional focus despite my personal turmoil, I received a text from Mom. "We should talk about this when you've calmed down." The message ignited a new wave of anger. They still didn't get it. They still thought I was overreacting. I didn't respond. For the next week, I ignored calls and texts from my family. No apologies came, only justifications and attempts to explain their side. Dad sent a particularly tone-deaf message. "Your sister is really excited about the boutique. You should stop by and see what your help made possible." My help, as if I'd volunteered my car for Amanda's latest venture. Jessica urged me to take time before making any decisions. "You have every right to be angry," she said, "but don't do anything you'll regret long term." What would you do? I asked her. She considered the question carefully. I'd make them understand there are consequences, not out of vengeance, but because they need to learn they can't treat you this way. Her words crystallized something in my mind. This wasn't about punishing my family. It was about standing up for myself in a way I never had before. It was about breaking a pattern that had defined our family dynamic for decades. I spent the weekend researching Liberty Pawn and Loan, reviewing the bonus details from my company, and consulting with Marcus about the legal ramifications of various approaches. By Sunday night, I had formed a plan, one that would recover my car and hopefully reset my family's understanding of boundaries. As I prepared for bed, Jessica asked, "Have you decided what you're going to do?" "Yes," I said. "I'm going to make them repay every cent." Monday morning, I called in a personal day at work and drove to Liberty Pawn and Loan. The building was more upscale than I'd expected. Less neon signs and barred windows, more business casual with security cameras. Inside, I asked to speak with the manager regarding a 1967 Shelby GT 500 recently brought in as loan collateral. A middle-aged man named Gerald Wilson introduced himself as the owner. When I explained the situation, that the car had been used as collateral without my permission, his expression grew concerned. "I'd like to see documentation proving you're the owner," he said cautiously. I produced the car's title, insurance documents, and a thick file of restoration receipts, all with my name on them. Gerald reviewed everything carefully. "This is troubling, Mr. Harris. The individuals who brought in the vehicle, an older couple and a young woman, presented a different story. They claimed the car belonged to their family. Technically, they're my family," I clarified, "but the car belongs solely to me." Gerald sighed. "Unfortunately, this puts us in a difficult position. We've already issued the loan. I understand that. I'm not suggesting you did anything wrong, but I'd like to know the exact terms of the arrangement." He pulled up the contract on his computer. $30,000 for 3 months at 20% interest, with a minimum monthly interest payment of $500. The first payment was due last Friday. My stomach tightened. "Has it been paid?" "No. We've sent 2 reminder notices already." If the payment was already late, the car could be at risk sooner than I'd realized. "What happens if they default?" "After 15 days of non-payment, we assess additional fees. After 30 days, we begin repossession proceedings. But given the value of the collateral compared to the loan amount, we typically work with clients to avoid that outcome." "I'd like to make the overdue interest payment," I said, pulling out my checkbook. Gerald looked surprised. "You understand this doesn't resolve the underlying loan. You'd just be preventing immediate default." "I understand." I added, "I also want to schedule a time to inspect the car and ensure it's being properly stored." After writing a check for $550, including the late fee, Gerald took me to the secure storage facility behind the main building. Seeing my Shelby under the fluorescent lights of a storage locker instead of in my garage sent a fresh wave of anger through me. I ran my hand along the forest green paint, checking for any damage. At least they had stored it properly, with a car cover and climate control. "She's a beauty," Gerald remarked. "I can see why you're concerned. I'll be resolving this situation soon," I assured him. "Please let me know immediately if there are any further developments with the loan." With that immediate crisis averted, I drove straight to my parents' house. It was time for the second phase of my plan. To my surprise, both their cars were in the driveway, along with Amanda's Mini Cooper. I hadn't expected to confront all 3 at once, but perhaps that was for the best. Mom answered the door, her expression brightening with hope. "Timothy, I'm so glad you came. We've been worried sick." The living room fell silent as I entered. Dad muted the TV, and Amanda looked up from her phone. I remained standing, declining Mom's offer to sit. "I visited Liberty Pawn and Loan this morning," I began, without preamble. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Son, we were going to handle that." "The first payment is already late," I interrupted. "Were you aware of that?" Amanda looked down. "Business has been a little slower than expected to start, but it'll pick up. I made the payment to prevent them from starting repossession procedures." That's very generous of you," Mom said cautiously. "It wasn't generosity. It was protecting my property." I turned to Amanda. "How's the boutique doing, really?" She hesitated. "We had a strong opening weekend, but foot traffic has been inconsistent since then. It's normal for new businesses." "Have you made any profit yet?" "Not exactly, but what about the next 2 payments?" And the $30,000 principal due in less than 3 months. Dad stood up. Now listen, Timothy, we're working on it. Amanda has a marketing plan and your mother and I can help with the payments temporarily. With what money? I asked. Your retirement fund? The silence that followed confirmed my suspicion. They were planning to drain their savings to bail out Amanda yet again. Mom tried a different approach. Timothy, I know you're upset about how this happened, and we should have asked you first. That was wrong of us. But now that we're here, can't you see this as an opportunity to help your sister establish herself? The way I've helped her pay rent when she quit jobs, or cover her credit card debt after shopping sprees, or loaned her money for that massage therapy certification she never finished? Amanda's face flushed. That's not fair. I've been finding myself for 15 years at everyone else's expense. At least I'm trying to build something, she shot back. Not everyone wants a soul-crushing corporate job like yours. My soul-crushing job just earned me a $100,000 bonus for the deal I closed while you were stealing my car. That silenced her momentarily. Dad saw an opening. Look, Tim, what's done is done. The question is how we move forward as a family. Amanda needs some time to get the business profitable. Maybe you could help with the loan payments until then, or even invest in the boutique properly. It could be a family business. I almost laughed at the audacity. They take my car without permission, use it for a loan they can't repay, and then ask me to invest more money to fix their mess. I have a counter-proposal, I said calmly, reaching into my jacket and pulling out the folder Marcus had prepared. You will repay every single cent. The words hung in the air. Mom's face turned white as she recognized the seriousness in my tone and the legal letterhead on the documents I placed on the coffee table. What is this? Dad asked, picking up the folder. A legally binding repayment agreement prepared by my attorney. It outlines how you and Amanda will repay the loan to recover the car, plus additional compensation for the unauthorized use of my property. Amanda jumped up. You're suing us? Your own family. I'm giving you an alternative to criminal charges for grand theft auto. Mom gasped. You wouldn't. I don't want to. But understand this. I will not pay for Amanda's business. I will not lose my car because of your poor decisions. And this pattern stops now. Dad skimmed the document, his face darkening. This requires us to make payments of $3,000 monthly, plus immediate repayment of any pawn shop fees. And if Amanda's business fails, we're still responsible for the full amount. That's correct. We can't afford this. Amanda protested. Then you shouldn't have taken out a loan using someone else's collateral. Mom was crying now. Timothy, please. We're your family. Family respects boundaries. Family doesn't take without asking. Family doesn't consistently favor one child over another for decades. That last statement hung in the air like a thunderclap. I had never voiced that particular truth before. Is that what this is about? Dad asked quietly. You think we favor Amanda? I don't think it. I've lived it. But that's a conversation for another day. Right now, we're focusing on the car and the loan. Amanda was looking at the repayment terms, panic rising in her eyes. These payments start next week. The boutique isn't generating this kind of revenue yet. Then you have decisions to make. This isn't fair, she exploded. You're being vindictive because you're jealous of my business. Jealous? I couldn't help but laugh. Amanda, I just closed a $14 million international deal. I'm not jealous of your boutique. I'm angry that you stole from me. We didn't steal. Mom protested. We were going to tell you when you got back. Taking something without permission is the definition of stealing, regardless of your intentions to confess later. Dad set the document down. And if we refuse to sign this? Then tomorrow I file a police report for grand theft auto and Liberty Pawn gets notified that their loan was secured with stolen property. The ultimatum settled heavily in the room. My parents exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Amanda was still fuming, but beneath her anger, I saw fear. For perhaps the first time in her life, she was facing real consequences. We need time to think, Dad finally said. I nodded. You have 24 hours. After that, I'm pursuing legal action. As I turned to leave, Amanda called after me. You're destroying this family. I paused at the door. No, Amanda. The damage was done when you decided my property was yours to take. I looked at each of them in turn. Contact my lawyer when you're ready to sign. Walking to my car, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Only a heavy certainty that this confrontation had been necessary even if it permanently altered my relationship with my family. Some boundaries, once crossed, change everything. The 24-hour deadline came and went without word from my family. On the morning of the second day, I was preparing to file the police report when Marcus called. "Your father just contacted me," he said. "They want to meet to discuss the repayment agreement." 3 hours later, we gathered in Marcus's office, my parents, Amanda, and myself, with Marcus mediating. The tension was palpable. Mom had clearly been crying. Dad looked like he hadn't slept, and Amanda refused to meet my eyes. "Before we begin," Marcus said professionally, "I want to clarify that while I'm facilitating this discussion, I represent Timothy's interests in this matter." Dad nodded stiffly. "We understand. We've reviewed your agreement," Mom said, her voice small. "We want to make this right, but the payment schedule is difficult for us. What do you propose instead?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Dad cleared his throat. "We can make the first payment immediately to cover the pawn shop fees. For the loan itself, we'd like to spread the payments over 6 months rather than 3. And what guarantee do I have that you'll follow through?" "You have our word," Mom said. "Your word wasn't enough to prevent you from taking my car in the first place." Amanda finally spoke up. "I'll sell inventory from the boutique, designer items I've already purchased, and I've listed my Mini Cooper for sale. It should cover at least $15,000. I was genuinely surprised by this concession. "And the rest," Dad sighed heavily. "We'll need to take some money from our retirement account." "Not all of it," he added quickly, seeing my expression, "but enough to cover the remainder." Marcus looked at me questioningly. After a moment's consideration, I nodded. "I'll agree to extend the repayment period to 6 months with the following conditions. First, Amanda transfers ownership of her business assets to my name as security until the loan is repaid. Second, I receive documented proof of the Mini Cooper listing today. Third, the first payment covering all pawn shop fees to date is made immediately." Amanda began to protest, but Dad cut her off. "We accept those terms." The next hour was spent revising the agreement and signing documents. Throughout the process, my family remained subdued, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. As Marcus notarized the final page, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Outside the office, as we prepared to leave, Mom touched my arm. "Timothy, I know you're angry now, but I hope someday you can forgive us." "This isn't about forgiveness, Mom. It's about consequences and respect." "We do respect you," she insisted. "We've always been proud of your accomplishments. Respect isn't just about pride. It's about recognizing boundaries. For years, you've expected me to help Amanda without question while allowing her to avoid responsibility for her choices. We were trying to help her find her path by taking mine, by teaching her it's okay to take what doesn't belong to her." Dad joined the conversation. "We made a mistake, son. A serious one. But don't throw away your family over a car." "It was never about the car." I kept my voice low but firm. "It was about what the car represents. My work, my choices, my boundaries, all of which you disregarded." They had no response to that. As they walked to their car, I noticed Amanda lingering behind. "I'm selling everything," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "The boutique inventory, my designer clothes, even my jewelry. I'm going to pay you back. I hope you do. You know this will bankrupt the boutique before it even has a chance, right? All my dreams, everything I've worked for gone." I considered pointing out that she'd worked far less for her dreams than I had for mine, but chose a different approach. Sometimes we have to lose something to understand its value. I lost 3 years of weekends to restore that car. Maybe spending some time rebuilding after this will teach you something similar. She finally looked at me directly. "You've changed." "No, Amanda. I've just stopped accepting the unacceptable." Over the following weeks, the resolution process unfolded according to the agreement. Amanda sold her Mini Cooper for $12,000 and liquidated her boutique inventory at deep discounts. My parents withdrew $20,000 from their retirement savings, a significant but not devastating amount. By the end of the first month, they had repaid enough to clear the pawn shop loan. I went with them to Liberty Pawn to finalize the paperwork and reclaim the Shelby. Gerald seemed relieved the situation was resolving without legal complications. "The car has been well maintained," he assured me as a staff member brought it around. "We even had our detail team give it a polish last week." Seeing the Shelby again, hearing the distinctive rumble of its engine, Watching sunlight play across the Highland green paint brought an unexpected lump to my throat. I ran my hand along the fender, checking for any scratches or damage, but found none. "She's all yours again," Gerald said, handing me the keys. "She always was," I replied quietly. With the car secured, the remaining obligation was the rest of the repayment schedule. True to their word, my family made each monthly payment on time. Amanda took a job as a sales associate at a high-end clothing store, using her fashion knowledge in a more practical way. She never mentioned opening another boutique. Throughout this period, I maintained a professional distance from my family. Our interactions were limited to brief text messages confirming payments and occasional necessary phone calls. Jessica supported my decision, but gently encouraged me not to close the door permanently. "They're making amends in the only way they know how," she observed after the third payment arrived. "Money was never the point," I said. "I know, but it's a start." At work, my success with the Frankfurt deal led to increased responsibilities and recognition. Richard pulled me aside after a board meeting where I presented our European expansion strategy. "The senior leadership team has been impressed with how you've handled yourself these past few months," he said. "Not just the business results, which have been exceptional, but your professionalism during what I gather has been a challenging personal time." I was surprised he'd noticed anything amiss. "I've tried to keep personal matters separate." That's precisely my point. Integrity in tough situations reveals character. Several people here have commented on it. The promotion to Vice President of International Ethics and Compliance followed 6 months later, a role that might never have materialized had I not stood firm during the family crisis. With part of my bonus, I invested in enhanced security for my home, including a state-of-the-art garage system with biometric locks and surveillance cameras. The Shelby would never be vulnerable again. As word of what had happened spread through our extended family and social circle, reactions were mixed. Some relatives thought I'd overreacted by involving lawyers and formal agreements. Others privately commended me for finally standing up to a pattern they'd observed for years. My uncle Robert, Dad's older brother, called me for the first time in years. "I heard what happened with the car," he said without preamble. "About time someone in this family taught Amanda there are consequences in life." "That wasn't my intention," I replied. Though in some ways it had been. Intention or not, it was necessary. Your father and I had a similar dynamic growing up. Him, the favored one. Me, expected to be the responsible brother. I wish I'd had your courage to draw a line. His words helped affirm that I wasn't overreacting, that the patterns in my family weren't healthy or normal. As the final payments approached, I began considering what our family relationship might look like moving forward, whether reconciliation was possible, and what form it might take. 6 months after the confrontation in Marcus's office, I received the final payment from my family. The entire loan had been repaid, along with all associated fees and the additional compensation we'd agreed upon. The legal matter was officially resolved, but the emotional aftermath remained uncertain. That evening, Jessica and I sat on my back deck, watching the sunset and discussing what should happen next. "They've met their obligations," she pointed out. "What are you thinking about the future of your relationship with them?" I've been asking myself the same question for weeks. I'm not sure. Part of me wants to move forward, but another part wonders if anything has really changed. There's only one way to find out. The next day, I called my mother and suggested a family dinner at a neutral location, a restaurant downtown where we'd celebrated special occasions in the past. She agreed immediately, the relief in her voice palpable. When Sunday evening arrived, I felt a strange nervousness as Jessica and I entered the restaurant. My family was already seated, dressed more formally than usual for what was clearly an important occasion to them. Amanda's hair was shorter, her style more subdued than I remembered. My parents looked older somehow, the past 6 months having left visible marks. After initial awkward greetings, Dad raised his water glass to fulfilling obligations and new beginnings. We clinked glasses, the gesture formal but significant. "I want to acknowledge that the final payment was made yesterday," I said. "Our legal arrangement is complete." "Yes," Mom said softly. "But I hope our family relationship isn't defined by legal arrangements going forward. That depends on whether things have really changed." Amanda cleared her throat. "I've been seeing a therapist," she said, surprising me, "working through some patterns. Entitlement issues. It's been eye-opening." Dad nodded. "Your mother and I have had some difficult conversations, too." about the way we've handled things over the years. We never meant to make you feel less valued, Mom added. We genuinely thought Amanda needed more support because she struggled where things seemed to come easily to you. Nothing came easily, I corrected. I just worked harder and complained less. We see that now, Dad admitted. We mistook your self-sufficiency for not needing us. The conversation continued through dinner, more honest than any we'd had before. Amanda shared that she'd been promoted to assistant manager at the clothing store and was taking night classes in business administration. I want to understand what you do, she told me. Not the international deals maybe, but the fundamentals of how businesses actually succeed. That's good, Amanda. And I've been saving, she added. Not for another boutique, but for my own place. I moved back in with Mom and Dad temporarily, but I'm taking responsibility for my finances now. As we finished dessert, Mom reached across the table and took my hand. We don't expect things to be fixed overnight. We know trust needs to be rebuilt, but we're committed to doing that work, however long it takes. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt a genuine openness to reconciliation. Not because they'd repaid the money, but because they finally seemed to recognize the real issues that had led to our breakdown. The following week, I had lunch with Marcus to thank him for his help and update him on developments. Families are complicated, he observed. Setting boundaries doesn't always make you popular, but it makes relationships healthier in the long run. I'm starting to see that, I agreed. For years, I enabled their behavior by never pushing back. In a strange way, I was part of the problem. Self-awareness is a rare quality, Tim. Use it wisely. A month later, I received an unexpected call from a former colleague who had started a small business incubator. We're looking for mentors to work with promising entrepreneurs. Your name came up as someone with both corporate experience and an understanding of the challenges small businesses face. I was intrigued. What exactly would that involve? Monthly mentoring sessions, occasional workshops. We're particularly interested in helping entrepreneurs who demonstrate strong ethics along with business potential. The timing felt significant. I agreed to mentor 3 startups, finding unexpected fulfillment in sharing knowledge with founders who approached business with integrity and a willingness to learn. I even established a small scholarship fund for young entrepreneurs who demonstrated both business acumen and strong ethical principles. At work, my proven integrity during the family crisis became an unexpected asset. When a sensitive compliance issue arose with another European client, Richard specifically requested I handle it. You've demonstrated you can navigate difficult situations while maintaining principles, he explained. That's exactly what we need here. The promotion to Vice President of International Ethics and Compliance followed 6 months later, a role that might never have materialized had I not stood firm during the family crisis. My relationship with my family continued to evolve cautiously. Small dinners became more regular, though always with clear expectations and boundaries. Amanda and I developed a new dynamic based on mutual respect rather than the old pattern of her taking and me giving. She consulted me about career decisions, but never asked for financial help. One surprising afternoon, she called to tell me she'd been offered a management position at an established boutique. They were impressed with my sales record and the business courses I've been taking, she said, pride evident in her voice. It's not owning my own shop, but it's a step toward learning how retail actually works from the inside. That's fantastic, Amanda. Really, I wouldn't have found this path if you hadn't forced me to face reality. It wasn't easy to hear, but it was necessary. The Shelby took on new meaning in my life as well. Beyond representing my hard work and passion, it now symbolized my self-respect and willingness to protect what mattered to me. Jessica and I began taking weekend drives along the coast, the powerful engine and open road becoming therapy of sorts. During one such drive, pulled over at a scenic overlook, watching waves crash against rocky cliffs, Jessica turned to me. You know what I admire most about how you handled everything? You stood your ground without becoming bitter. That's rare. I came close to bitterness, I admitted. But you chose a better path. You insisted on accountability without seeking revenge. You left room for growth. Her observation made me reflect on the fine line I'd walked. The confrontation had been necessary, but so was the willingness to accept genuine change afterward. As autumn leaves began to fall, I invited my parents to my house for the first time since the conflict. They seemed nervous as they entered, glancing toward the garage. Would you like to see it? I asked, recognizing their curiosity. Dad nodded. If that's okay with you. I led them to the garage where the Shelby gleamed under perfect lighting in my new secure space. Dad walked around it slowly, admiring the craftsmanship that had gone into the restoration. It really is extraordinary, he said quietly. I should have recognized what it represented to you. It's not too late to understand each other better, I replied. That evening, as we shared a meal that Mom had insisted on cooking, we didn't discuss the past. Instead, we talked about the future, their retirement plans, my career, Amanda's progress. Not as a perfect family, but as people trying to build something healthier than what came before. Later, after they'd left, Jessica found me in the Shelby's driver's seat, lost in thought. Penny for your thoughts? She asked, leaning against the door. I was thinking about something Frank told me years ago at the auto shop. He said, we spend our lives collecting things that matter to us, but what really counts is knowing which ones are worth fighting for. And what did you decide is worth fighting for? Self-respect, boundaries, and family. But only when it's built on mutual respect rather than obligation. That sounds like wisdom earned the hard way. The best kind. Looking back now, the crisis over my car became the dividing line in our family history. A painful but necessary reset that forced us all to examine patterns we'd accepted for too long. Sometimes the most important boundaries aren't the ones that keep others out, but the ones that define who we are and what we'll accept in our lives.